Welcome, online educators. Welcome, Pete, to the podcast. I am so thankful to have you here today and really appreciate your time and the chance to get to know you.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to come on. It's really great to come on and talk to anyone in the world of education. About being autistic, about neurodiversity. It's fantastic. So yeah, thank you very much.
I love it. Yes, I am so excited to dive in. I feel like we have a lot we could possibly talk about. So let's just get into it. One of the things I love about your writing, your videos, is that you portray autism in a very positive light. You see it as a positive thing in so many ways. And in education, sometimes we look at students and we use a deficit mindset or that deficit lens first. And if we look at a student on the spectrum and we see their strengths first, then we'd be much better able to serve them. I'd love for educators, especially online teachers, to understand what it is that you understand about the positives of being on the spectrum. You did us such a favor when you wrote a blog post in the spring of 2020, that year, about what you love about being autistic. Can you share some of those things with us today?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think you're right. A kind of a shift to a more positive view of being autistic would be such a huge benefit to pretty much everybody involved. I mean, I think there is so much. There is so much. Before I do want to. I always like to stipulate many things because everyone's different. All autistic people have a very different experience, and though I do believe that autism has got lots of positive strengths, it won't necessarily be the same for everybody. We are a varied bunch. So that is worth bearing in mind. But I think generally speaking, most of what I will talk about is fairly applicable to a huge number of autistic people. And one of the big positives, I think, especially in the world of education, is what we call hyperfocus. Okay, which is a term that we tend to use to describe the kind of intense ability to focus on one thing almost at the expense of everything else. So for example, if I'm researching something, if I'm looking into something, for my writing or just for fun or whatever it might be, then I as an autistic person have a kind of ability to just switch everything else off and just immerse myself completely in that one thing. I mean, I think a lot of people have got that to a lesser degree, but I think for autistic people and also some people with ADHD, it is so deep and so intense that we can forget to do lots of important things, like forget to eat, forget to drink, forget to even sleep. But the positive side is obviously how much we can get done when we're in that state. If we manage to hyper-focus on something that is truly useful or beneficial in some way, like a piece of schoolwork, for example, for a student. Like I remember doing that as a kid, especially with stories. I've always loved English, so I would hyper focus on a story and it would be all I could think about. I would start it in school and I would go home and I would write it at home and I would carry on again and I'd talk to the teacher about it endlessly, until they were bored of me. And that I think that is something that can be really kind of, I don't want to say used, but kind of harnessed, but by a skilled teacher, when they see that happening, when they see that an autistic student is in that kind of zone, that is something that you should almost kind of leap on and be like, right, we're going to make the most of this, and really benefit from this hyper focus.
Absolutely. I can see a teacher, like, trying to harness that, and if they're keen to notice it, like, "Hey,
Yeah,
okay, maybe I can be flexible with the next hour of my lesson plan or the next
exactly.
whatever, and let this kiddo just go do their thing." Yeah.
That is exactly it. Having that flexibility and thinking, you know what, this student, for whatever reason, is really into this. They're really enjoying this. So, how important is my plan? Really? How important is it that we move on to the next thing very quickly? That doesn't work for autistic people generally. We like to spend a bit more time on things, especially when we truly get invested. So yeah, be flexible, be a bit more open to thinking, you know what? Yeah, this is really worth it. This is really valid. This student wants to explore, I don't know, this historical event in more detail. So let's let them, and really, as I say, harness that tremendous ability. Because honestly, when I'm in that, some autistic people call it the flow state, which I think is a nice term for it. When I'm in that zone, when I'm writing, for example, and it's just happening because I'm completely fixated. It's a joy, it really is. It feels good, to let my brain do that. Because all too often we're ripped from it and we're told, no, you must now focus on this thing. Now that time is over. Now you've got to do maths or whatever, and to be allowed to, immerse in it like a nice warm bath, is joyous and wonderful. And I do worry that autistic students are ripped from that very positive state very frequently, maybe multiple times a day.
Yeah, you're really challenging some of the beliefs I have based on neuroscience research
Mm-hmm.
that has been published for teachers specifically. And I'm wondering now what population they were studying and how many autistic students were in that population, because there's so much we're taught about jumbling up learning or interleaving and having all that space. And now I'm listening to you and thinking, oh, that actually might not be so great, right? For
Yeah.
the student who's on the spectrum.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I remember, I don't teach anymore. I finished teaching about a year ago now. But when I was, teaching and I was keeping up to date with things and, interleaving was a huge thing. Over in the UK, it was massive. All the kind of, the Twitter teachers, the influencers, the education influencers
Yes.
were talking about it. And I like the idea of it a great deal. I think it's a good idea, for, a lot of the time for a lot of students. But again, flexibility. There has to be some, because it won't work. It won't work so well for a lot of autistic students. Interestingly, it works fairly well, I think, for some ADHD students because of, the way that ADHD minds can work. But when we're talking about autism itself, then yeah, you need to have a bit of legroom to try something a bit different, I think.
I like that. I love when what I think I know is totally challenged and possibly wrong. It makes my brain grow. This is good. What else do you see? That hyperfocus is definitely a huge asset. What are some of the other positives?
I think another one, and I'm wary, I don't want to overgeneralize too much here, but I think it is fair. Another one that I do like, another thing that I like, is the clarity of autistic communication. And you really get this kind of shine when you spend a lot of time as an autistic person with non-autistic people and then go and spend some time with another autistic person and you notice the difference. Because for whatever reason, autistic communication values absolute clarity above all else. And I don't know whether this is quite such a thing over in the US as it is in the UK, but in my long experience of, basically being alive, a lot of non-autistic communication is very heavily implicit. Everything is hinted at, and there's a lot of guessing involved. Like I say, I think in the UK is almost kind of famous for being very like that. I think the US has a bit more of it's almost like a stereotype for us. But I think the US, is a bit more okay with being a bit blunter and a bit more open and a bit more clarity. But I think you still have it. I think there will still be a kind of culture of hinting that you want things, hinting that you want things to happen, hinting that you want somebody to do something. I think that is quite natural. And autistic people, generally speaking, don't have time for that. It doesn't come naturally to us to do that
Right.
at all. It wouldn't occur to me to hint for something because it's just so much more straightforward just to say, oh, can I have a drink of water, please? And
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. I think in a world which is often quite complex and maybe made more complex unnecessarily by this strange insistence on hinting all the time, that a straightforward,
Yeah.
clear, this is what I want, can I have this please, is it's got to be a good thing. It's got to be.
Absolutely. And especially in the online setting, I'm
Yes,
thinking,
yes.
oftentimes we're having class online and whether or not students have their cameras on or what they're looking at, even when, sometimes we put this hyper focus on cameras on and seeing each other's faces. But honestly, when there's more than 3 faces in the room and you're screen sharing some kind of presentation, like what are we visually really taking in? So, but just thinking as a teacher then, how can we be super clear? How can we be really direct and thoughtful in choosing our words and then being okay with students asking us direct questions or being that clear and direct back with it. I love any chance I get to quote Brene Brown, I totally will, and she says, "Clear is
Yeah.
kind." And that's exactly what you're saying, is like, just get to it, and I think that's something that, when we talk about the hidden curriculum, or we talk about all these implicit things of brick and mortar school or online, what is the way we behave in a Zoom room, or how is it that we behave in a brick and mortar class? All of that, if you can cut through a bunch of that
Yeah.
and just be really clear. And appreciate that in our autistic students, because sometimes they might say something that we don't appreciate, but it is
Yes.
clear and
Yeah.
it is true and it's
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
okay.
I mean, yeah, I've had that before, criticism, from an autistic student in the classroom in front of all the other kids. And, it can feel a bit challenging to your authority as a teacher. But, it's... You've got to be challenged. You've got to be, and so long as it's not like aggressive or like unnecessarily unpleasant, then I'll take feedback. I'll take it. That's fine by me.
Right.
And I think the clarity in the classroom in particular, especially I suppose when you're doing online, to do anything around the completion of tasks, I always found to be quite interesting. So whenever I had an autistic student in the room, and I remember this as well from when I was an autistic student myself, I would always make triple sure that they knew exactly what the expectation was. So, I mean, I have a tendency to be a bit vague on this. So, I might say something silly like, "Oh, well, write as much as you can," or write plenty, get plenty down on the page. And for a lot of people, that's fine. That okay, I will write. But for an autistic student, the process that might happen there is, when told to write as much as you can, well, how much can I write? I don't know. If I really try, I can probably write like 10 pages if I did it all night. And if you don't set barriers or limitations, then that could be what happens. Or the other way, how much can I write? Well, I don't feel very well right now, and I'm not really enjoying this work, so I can't write much, so I won't write much. Far better to say, I want you to write 10 lines. As kind of weirdly Victorian as it feels. One thing that a lot of people used to do in the department I used to run was we'd draw a highlighter like line, pink or green or something, down the margin for how long we wanted them to write for. Just to instill that idea of, for this kind of question, you've got to write this kind of amount if you're to have any chance of, really getting to the point or going into the required detail. And that worked because it's completely clear. It's totally transparent what you want from them.
Absolutely. I love that. And the visual cue, you can see how much progress you're making and, all right, I'm almost there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Got a long way to go. That's fantastic. I love it. These are such positive ways of looking at autism. And I know there's a million other positives, and they are, like you've stated, differences for every different person, right? It's that old cliche, you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. That's it. So just like all people, we are all humans. We're very unique. But I think those two strengths are really important for teachers to, one, be aware of, and then two, work to harness and appreciate themselves. So if we can appreciate that hyperfocus in a student, and it might come at an unexpected moment to us, but to be flexible with our planning or to be flexible with our expectations and let them run with it, rock on. That is awesome. And then to work on our own clarity of our expectations and our communication and appreciate that in students, even if sometimes it is that criticism that we might feel a little uncomfortable with, to grow from that. It's very humbling and it's kind. It's just so kind to be as clear as we possibly can to the other person, because we're diminishing anxiety, we're diminishing worry, you know, like you highlighting on that page. That's just, it's clear.
Exactly.
That's very kind because, you're setting each other up for success, which is, we're all in it together. So that's always a good thing. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the fact that you're an author as well and a little bit about your book. Stay with us, folks. What's the one thing all online schools and programs struggle with? Student engagement and the ability to truly personalize interventions. How do we solve those problems? With the use of Admin Dash, a brand new Canvas LTI tool from SYS Education. Admin Dash allows online teachers to see a risk assessment score that proactively identifies students who may need more specialized attention or intervention, and offers a communication log that provides an outlet for complete transparency among teachers, admin, students, and families. At just 99 cents per student per year, and with no minimum price and no fees, you can't afford to not use Admin Dash. For more information about Admin Dash, contact sales at syseducation.org and start connecting proactively with your online learners. All right, well, welcome back, online educators. We are talking about autism and online teaching and learning today with my guest, Pete Wharmby. Pete, in your book, What I Want to Talk About, How Autistic Special Interests Shape a Life, that comes out in September of 2022. I'm curious to know what special interests have shaped your life and what part can educators play, in your view, in supporting special interests of students on the spectrum in their classes.
Well, yeah, indeed. The whole book is basically built around every chapter being a different one of my special interests that have kind of haunted my life, for almost the entirety of it. So basically, I found a way for a publisher to agree to let me write about things that I love a great deal, and which was which was great.
That's the best.
It is, yeah. I mean, I was very lucky, really, and I took the opportunity, obviously, to work in information about autism into every kind of nook and cranny of each chapter. So the idea is that whilst reading it, you almost learn about autism through stealth, which is one of my favourite ways to teach anything. But in the book, every chapter is dedicated to a different special interest. So, for example, the first one is dedicated to Lego, which is probably my prime, most long-lived interest. I've had that since I was a kid. I've always owned Lego, and now I'm an adult and I'm allowed to have as much Lego as I want. I'm basically in a room now which is just Lego. I mean, you can't, in the video that you can see, you can't see very much apart from, I think, the Statue of Liberty is just peeking up just here. But anyway, people can't see that.
I see her arm.
But I'm surrounded by it, and it's a true joy for me. There's something about the feel of it. There's something about the look of it, the detail, the intricacy. I do find that a lot of autistic people have a real love of miniatures for some reason, just small things. So whether it's like miniature soldiers, that you play those games with, or whether it's train sets or Lego or model making of any kind, it seems to be quite a common thing. I don't really know why that is, but there's something about the intricacy of it, I think, that's a big part of it. There are other special interests that I mention in the book. I talk about video games quite a lot. I talk about playing music and, being on stage and being in a band and all that kind of thing when I was younger, in my earlier days. Because I think music is something that a lot of people don't tend to associate with autism. Autism's got this stereotype of being very scientifically minded and all about data and mathematics. And, that's the kind of stereotype that exists. But, if you speak to autistic people, you'll find autistic people who love dancing, who love singing, who are, obsessed with music, with film, with all kinds of things. I mean, I think I said in the book, if you can imagine it, then there is some autistic person somewhere for whom that is their special interest. Literally everything. There'll be somebody somewhere. I met a person who's absolutely obsessed, completely fixated, and loves to collect beer mats. Just the little things on tables, with the logo of a beer company or something like that. And they that's their thing.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Absolutely. So yeah, I cover them all, and the final one that I finish up on is the Titanic, because that's the story of the ship that sank on its maiden voyage. That's been a fixation of mine since I was probably 7 or 8 years old, I think, when my dad brought home from the library a copy of Robert Ballard's book about discovering the wreck, back in 1985. And ever since then, I've just been completely fixated on it. And it was something that at school I used to bring up very often, because I was interested in it. I knew an awful lot about it. I'd read about it so much that I probably knew more about it than anyone, any of the teachers will have done. And I would bring it up at every opportunity. If there was a project, for example, that I had to work on, then I would do the Titanic, and if there was a talk that I had to give, well, there we go, I'll do that then. And to be fair, I was always encouraged in that, by the teachers. They could have, if they'd wanted to, say, come on, try something different. Come on, you can expand your horizons a little bit. But to their credit, in my opinion, they never did. I think they recognised, even though they didn't know I was autistic, and nor did I at that point, they recognised that there was such a passion there that it would be silly to tarnish it, silly to ruin it, just let me have it, let me
Yes.
run with that. And that would probably be my biggest advice to any teacher, that works with autistic students. They will have their interests. They might not share it with you, but if a student is feeling confident enough to share with you, that they have a special interest in this, that, or the other, then take it as a sign of trust, and as a good thing generally. And as I said, it's not necessarily a case of really even having to engage in conversation so much, or to share your own knowledge. Often, what an autistic person really wants is just someone to talk to, literally just to talk
Mm.
to. So all you really need to do is listen, nod your head, show an interest, and be that person who is interested in what we're interested in, because we lack that so frequently. Some of my favourite memories as a kid were teachers or adults who genuinely were interested in what I was focused on at that time, and were just happy to listen. I remember my granddad being a great person for that, because he wouldn't necessarily get involved too much, but he would always listen. And that was something that is so valuable, so valuable. So yeah, if you have a student, then let them talk, and then they will talk.
And that's what we all want, right? That's what humans want, is that feeling of connection, that
Yeah.
feeling that you've been heard. And to be able to
Hmm.
listen is very simple and something we can absolutely all do. That's a gift we can all give our students, whether they are autistic or not, but especially those kids on the spectrum who, like you said, might not always have someone who's interested in hearing about the thing that they're really passionate about. And so to be that person during the school day,
Exactly.
yeah, that's really powerful. That's really and I'm glad your grandpa was there as well to be that person for you. I think that's just so important, something we all need. Pete, I have one more
Hmm. Yeah,
question
for
for you
sure.
if you're game. All right, if there was one thing, material or otherwise, that you could give to every teacher either in the United States or in the UK, what would it be and why?
It is I've been thinking about this ever since I read the question originally, because it's a very, very good question, and there are so many different potential ways to take it. But I guess what I really wish I could do, if it were possible, is to have some kind of situation where all of the knowledge and understanding of what autism really is, that is held by autistic people ourselves, our
Mm,
experience and our understanding of what it is to be autistic, could somehow just be downloaded into everybody else's head, so they all understood it too. You know, I know that sounds ridiculous, because I suppose in many ways it is, but I find that the one thing that causes most of the problems, if not all of the problems, really, is just a lack of understanding. Because what autistic people really need, and what we want, and what we the kind of treatment that we deserve almost, whether we're students or grown adults, is simple. It's not magical or complicated or even expensive, to be quite honest. It's
right?
just for people to understand what it is to be autistic, and to listen to us, and to understand that we're not doing it on purpose. All of these personality traits and all of these things that we may do, we're not doing it to upset anyone. We're not being blunt because we want to be rude. It's just part of how our minds work. And we're not trying to talk your ear off about our interests because we want to bore you or irritate you. It's just part of how our brains work. And if I could somehow make it so that everyone just understood that very basic idea that autistic people are different, we're not less, we're not deficient in some way, we're not broken, or unwell or anything like that. We just have a different brain. We just have a different architecture in our brain that means that we do things and we see things and we perceive things in a different way. Just to remove that stigma and that taboo and that prejudice, I think, that can unfortunately still exist, in some places. If I could make that happen, then
Absolutely.
that would be absolutely life changing. Get that information out there on a more practical level. Because obviously that's a little bit of a pipe dream. I would say that the thing that I would give, and certainly that I would try to foster and encourage, would be simple patience.
Hmm.
Because as far as I can see, having just that extra little bit of patience for your neurodivergent students can go such a long way. and it's not too expensive. A little bit of patience, it's usually available. You can usually tap into it. And it can change an autistic student's day. It can change an autistic student's life. Just to show a little bit more patience and to understand and to not jump to conclusions and not react badly. When
Absolutely.
when something occurs. And I'm aware that these are very abstract things. I mean, obviously, you can throw money at it, and in many ways, I would recommend that too. Spend money on getting autistic people in your schools, or to do training, or to share their experiences. Buy our books, not just mine, but
Yes.
there's lots of autistic people out there writing books. So learn about us and figure it out. But often, it really does boil down just to simple patience. Just to not jump to conclusions, not assume the worst of us, and just give us a bit of space and time and realize that we're not trying to, bother you or ruin your day.
Mhm. I'm thinking so much about the ideas you've presented today and how it's a kind of about slowing down, like just taking our time,
Yes.
listening to folks, having that patience, and having an appreciation for neurodiversity. Like neurodiversity is real. And so letting everyone be who they are, how they are.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like a big warm hug right now thinking about you imparting that gift to the masses of just patience and understanding that listening to actually autistic voices is really important. It's one of the reasons I was so excited to have you come and speak with me and our audience to hear you is because oftentimes we talk about topics or we talk about populations of people, but we really need to start talking with and listening to those
Exactly.
populations a
Yeah.
bit more. Pete, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, one, for challenging some of my beliefs about education and what we should be doing, and for two, encouraging us to just be really much more open and empathetic with our students. I hope our teachers have learned so much from you. I hope they all buy your book. If they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to find you?
The easiest and quickest way is through my website because it's just straightforward. It's Pete Wharmby. .com. It's just my name.com. So I was
Awesome.
quite happy with that. So if you go on the website, then there's email links. You can get in touch with me via email. It's got links to my YouTube, to my Twitter, to my I think it's got a link to my LinkedIn as well. All of my social medias are kind of there as a hub. So yeah, that's by far the easiest way to get in touch. And I love it when I get emails, unsolicited emails from people in the UK, in Europe, Australia sometimes, America very frequently, actually. I'm often getting emails from people in America just asking for a bit of advice or whatever it might be. I always try and find time to respond and just give my thoughts. I can't claim, any expertise other than just my own lived experience and my understanding of the community, but hopefully, my words are useful,
Yes.
and can help.
Absolutely. And I'll put links in the show notes to all of that so folks can find you on YouTube, Twitter, your website, your blog, all of
Mhm.
it, because it's fantastic. Thanks again for your time today, Pete. It was a total pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you very, very much for having me. It's been really, really lovely to talk with you about all these things, especially getting the opportunity to talk about Lego for a little while. That's
Any day,
that's
right?
always a joy for me. So thank you for listening.